Hello and welcome to a new episode of I Can Do. I hope and pray all is well with you. We are in the month of July. What an amazing time it is to be alive. There are so many wonderful blessings that you and I get to enjoy every day. So let's make sure that we take advantage of life because life, it is so short. It can change in a blink of an eye. We all know that to be true. Today, I want to talk a little bit about life. And I actually want to talk a little bit about my life, not in a way that I'm coming across, hopefully, not being arrogant or anything like that. But after a couple hundred episodes of I Can Do, almost 5 years later, there are new people who are listening to the podcast, maybe for the first time, a lot of new guests who have been joining me as well. And so hopefully this podcast will continue to spread all around the world. So I thought, you know what? It may be a good opportunity and a good time for me to reintroduce myself. I don't know about you, but some podcasts have hundreds of episodes, and for some, maybe you do go back and listen to those episodes. I think the average amount a podcast has with respect to episodes is 57, and that could be weekly or bi-weekly or every other week or monthly, whatever the case may be. But I'm over 200 episodes in. Lord willing, we're going to keep this going. So I thought, let me introduce myself, which is actually one of the hardest things to do. Have you ever noticed that if you are at some networking event, or maybe you go to some place new for the first time, maybe it's a family gathering, maybe it's a dinner function or something like that, people ask you, or they ask you the question, what do you do? How have you responded to that question? What do you do? Or maybe the question, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, one of the best things that you can do when you get a question like that is have some fun with it, number one, use an analogy, number two, and recreate yourself each time someone asks you that question. Sometimes when we ask the question, what do we do? We may just go through a laundry list of our resume, or sometimes people almost sound like they're a little bit embarrassed or disappointed with the answers that they have to give. And if not careful, the person who is listening may kind of come across like, okay, that's what you do. But don't underestimate yourself. Don't underestimate the impact that you have in the lives of so many people. All right. So I want you to really start thinking about that. So you may be thinking, okay, Ben, what do you do? Well, how much time do you have? That's one way I can answer the question, because thank the Lord, I do a lot. Another way I might answer the question is I help transform people's lives. As I think about me being a preacher, I am sharing the gospel, sharing the most important message of mankind with respect to who Jesus is, what he accomplished on the cross, and the fact that the tomb of Jesus is empty, that he was risen from the dead on the third day. So sharing that, and when people respond to that and hear that and believe it and follow it, their lives are being transformed. It's not by my power, but I am sharing this story and teaching the Bible that certainly helps transform the lives of so many people. So I'm blessed that I have this opportunity to help transform people's lives through the teaching and the sharing of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But there are other things that I do as well. When people ask the question, what do I do? My life is kind of like an iceberg. There is a small amount that you see, but there's a lot that's really going on in a lot of different ways. So I do preach, but I also podcast. Pickleball is a passion of mine. Traveling is a passion of mine. Family, fitness, books. There's so many different things that I like to do. So my life sometimes is like the tip of an iceberg. It's kind of hard to just say one thing because there's so many other things that are not always seen. But I do want to share with you, getting more direct, a little bit more about myself. Maybe this is the first time you're listening to the podcast. I hope it won't be the last time. I started this podcast in 2019. It's been almost 5 years now. I had bought a microphone. It sat in a closet of mine. I had the opportunity to go on another podcast, my wife, Nikki, and I. That really gave me a push of, you know what? it's time for me to start this podcast. I can remember I was getting interviewed by a couple of people, and they had asked me why I started the podcast. And I think the look, at least that's what I felt like. They looked at me like, that's kind of a weird reason to begin a podcast. But I had a lot of fear about would I be successful? That's changed a lot over the years about what exactly success even looks like in podcasting. A lot of people don't start. I was reading some stats recently. 38,000 podcasts die every year. 2020 marked a huge spike, 2020 and 2021, with new podcasts, and then those numbers have fallen off. So, success for some is just pushing record and getting that started. That certainly has been successful for me. Another period of success for me with the podcast was inviting people to be on the show. What would they say? Would they say yes? Would they say no? How would I interact with certain people that I've never met before? I love being able to talk to so many people around the world. So I've had a lot of success. People are obviously listening to the podcast, engaging in it, following it, sharing it, which I really appreciate as well. So that's why the podcast got started in 2019. But like the iceberg, there's more than meets the eye. I Can Do really goes back to a heart condition that I have. I have what's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a portion of my heart that is enlarged. It's a genetic condition. And back in 2010, I had to get or ended up deciding to get what's called an ICD, implantable cardioverter defibrillator. Really more so for a primary prevention in the event that I go into some kind of fatal rhythm. Lord willing, I have some kind of backup with that. I was 30 at the time, really discouraged, thinking about getting something like this. So I wanted to reinvent this idea of what ICD really means. So that's where I Can Do came from. I wanted to turn it into a positive. And even now, looking back, it really was a positive because I had so many great things. Number one, I had health insurance to get the defibrillator. Number two, I had the means and resources to go to some of the best doctors in the world with this condition. Number three, I had a lot of family and church support as well. I had so many blessings. You know, thinking back though, when I was 30, a lot of that you don't always see and appreciate. So I wanted to change this into something more positive because I was viewing it as something that was, man, I'm getting a piece of metal in my chest. I'm 30 years old. How am I going to look? Am I going to be able to work out? What's my wife going to say about this? All these different fears. Am I going to get shocked? What if something wrong happens in the procedure? So that's where I Can Do was really born for me, and this idea of getting this defibrillator. So I can remember going back to that time I created wristbands. I don't have any. I should start creating them more. Wristbands that said I Can Do, or ICD equals I Can Do. I created stationery, created t-shirts, workout shirts, things like that. So it's been a part of my life for a long time. Now, I Can Do may seem maybe too personal, but I also want to use it and to help you to have an I Can Do attitude. So I can do, you can do. That's really the idea behind it. I want you to have an I Can Do attitude. I believe life is so much about attitude, how we view different things that are happening, how we are going to respond to them as well. So, I Can Do is really all about mindset. It's about attitude. It's about perspective. It's about getting up when you fall down. It's about suffering well. It's about helping others. It's about overcoming. There's so many things that we could say or that I could say about I Can Do, but all of those different thoughts and terms and phrases come to mind. I've been so blessed by the Lord. I can still work out, play pickleball. I ran a marathon since getting the defibrillator. I've done at least 2 or 3 half marathons, one marathon, numerous 5Ks. I can remember the first time I had to wait about 6 weeks before I could start really ramping up the exercise. And the first time I went jogging, I fell. And I was so scared because I was thinking, man, I just ruined this device. But thank the Lord, nothing bad happened. So as I look back and think about this, I'm so blessed that I have the ability to work and the industry or healthcare with respect to hypertrophic cardiomyopathy has greatly improved with defibrillators getting smaller, drugs for people who have certain pharmaceutical medication, for people who have certain heart or certain parts or conditions within HCM, which are really encouraging as well. So there's just a lot of great blessings for me to enjoy. So that's really the history behind I Can Do. If you listen to all the episodes, you'll notice that faith, family, fitness, food is a big component of my life. Books, challenges, personal growth, personal development, faith in God and Jesus. I'm a Christian. And so all of these things have slowly been poured out in this podcast. You'll also notice if you listen to some of the episodes that sometimes I can kind of go back and forth. Should I continue the podcast? Should I stop it? How is it actually impacting people? What more should I do? So I've tried a variety of things as well. I believe I'm finally getting the right perspective. I've been off social media. I'm currently off all social media. Don't plan to go back. And really, just this is an opportunity for me to connect with you wherever you are around the world. You can go to my website, benjaminlee.blog, as well. But this is my main opportunity to connect with people all around the world. Now, with preaching, I have the church family here, which is such a huge blessing that I get to connect with multiple times a week. And so this is an opportunity to go even further outside of just this local realm to talk to you, to encourage you, providing free content to help your life to improve and to have the proper perspective. So that's a little bit about me with respect to the podcast. I hope this encourages you. Maybe you're listening and maybe you thought about starting a podcast. I believe everybody has a story, and I'm learning more about so many people who have been on the show that are sharing their story. That's something I want to continue to do as well in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. I have so much content that I want to share with you. So it's just a matter of me getting the content out and having you to share it with people that you believe that it would be beneficial for as well. I was doing some research on Spotify and just looking at podcasts that are growing. Word of mouth, friends, family, those are still the number one ways that podcasts are growing. Now, there are some like the Tim Ferriss podcast, um, Joe Rogan podcast, the Mel Robbins podcast. Those podcasts are in a different stratosphere, and that's okay because they've put in a lot of hard work. They've been around for a number of years. And now those are really just kind of like household names. The Huberman Lab podcast, great podcast as well. So word of mouth, however, for most podcasts is still going to be the number one way. And social media, while that's something big that's out there, just doing some research and looking at this, that's at number 4. So there's still the organic opportunity to grow and to meet people and to encourage people in a variety of ways. So I'm really excited about that. That's given me a fresh perspective and some extra motivation as well to continue down this path to help you. So that's a little bit about me. I've been married now for 20 years. We're blessed with our son and our dog and the family that we have around us. Previous to getting into preaching full time, which will be 15 years on July 2nd. And let's see here, that'll actually be the day after this podcast is published. Hitting the 15-year mark, which has just been such a blessing. I worked in pharmaceutical sales for about 8 years with Pfizer. So I've just had a tremendous life. And there are so many more things to come that hopefully I can improve upon in my life. I definitely have a lot of areas to improve in my life and to grow with this podcast and to help so many other people as well in a way that will better the world. So I wanted to reintroduce myself. I want you to check out the podcast, listen to some of the episodes, lots of different resources available, lots of different guests that are available. that will definitely benefit you as well. And so we're halfway through the year. The best is yet to come. So let's get after it. And I tell you what, if you have episode suggestions or someone that you think would be beneficial on the podcast, reach out to me. I can do coaching at pm.me. I can do coaching at pm.me. That's my email. Reach out to me. And if it's a good fit, we'll see what we can do to make it happen. I hope and pray all is well with you. Thank you so much for checking this out, for listening, for your support for these 4.5, close now to 5 years of the podcast. Be sure to check out the links and the show notes with my one of my favorite supplements that I'm using, UCAN, UCAN. Check out that, where you can get some supplements at a discounted rate using my link in there in the show notes. And if there's anything else that I can do for you, please let me know. Take care and God bless.